ebyobufuzi, ebyenfuna, eddiini, ennono n'ebyobuwangwa byonna bisange wano ku Olutimbe TV.
Olutimbe TV, be informed.
People power, our power, one Uganda, one people, viva Kenya, viva, viva Uganda, viva, viva Africa, viva. Thank you very much, and thank you, my brother Giuliani, for that short yet very powerful presentation. We appreciate it. Otherwise, whoever put me to speak after Dr. Kizabesije, you have to answer for that. Dear Mr. David Malombe, the ED of Kenya Human Rights Commission, Dr. Bernard, the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, Comrade Boniface Mwagi, and your dear wife, Dr. Omona, the one who gave us a moving keynote address, Dr. Kiza Besije, our friend, our inspiration, our elder, Mama Martha Karua, honored to be in your presence. Dear General Mujisha Muntu, Right Honorable Winnie Kiza, who was my leader of opposition when I was member of parliament between 2017 and 2020. Right Honorable Matthias Mpoka, the leader of opposition, leader of our parliamentary team. Mama Dr. Lina Zedriga, Deputy President, Northern Uganda. Honorable John Mujisha, Deputy President, Western Uganda. Comrade David Lewis Bongoya. Honorable members of parliament, fellow leaders, friends, fellow Ugandans, brothers and sisters from Kenya, fellow Africans, I salute you today. I am very, very grateful for your presence. I want to thank many of you that have come from Uganda. It has not been very easy to be here. I appreciate your presence. Fellow East Africans, the Kenyans, our brothers and sisters that have always looked out for us. Thank you very much for coming. I want to give respect to our elders, the likes of Imam Kasozi, who we've watched over time, the likes of General Shamuntu, and in a very special way, Dr. Kiza Besije. We salute you for showing us the way and continuing to stand and live. I'll remind you, Dr. Besije, and you briefly talked about it, that you are the person that challenged me and many other people in my generation to rise to the occasion. It was that visit when I visited you in prison that you told me, while looking in my eyes, that you were a successful doctor during their mean times. But because nobody was safe until everybody was safe, you got into the trenches where you still are today. I want you to know, sir, that we hold you in very high regard. We respect you, we love you, and we are with you. To the Kenyans, I personally got moved and shaken to awakeness when I was in military prison 2018. I was supposed to die. You saw a lady here That is the mother of my driver, Yasin Kauma, who was shot thinking they had shot me, and he died. I was in prison, and it was going to go down like any other abduction. But thanks to the brothers and sisters in Kenya, you started massive protests, which protests spread to the entire world. That is the reason why I'm still alive today. And friends, it did not just start with me. You Kenyans have stood with us from way back in the 60s, in the 70s, when General Museveni and many of his colleagues were fighting against the Obote dictatorship. You housed them, you supported them, you accommodated them. You have not stopped. Even today, you are still with us. Friends, we don't take that for granted. Please don't stop. Continue being our brothers. We will be your brothers as well. Now, the November massacres. You all know that this is a Ugandan issue, and we should be holding this conference in Uganda. It's very unfortunate that we cannot be in Uganda. We cannot mourn our people in Uganda. We cannot talk about issues of human rights in Uganda. That is the sad reality we find ourselves in today. While we are here demanding accountability and focusing on the November massacres, somebody has said it that they did not start, the massacres and the extrajudicial killings by the Museveni regime did not start today, did not start with 2021. It has been happening, including the massacre that took place in Kasese in November 2016, where more than 200 people, including women and children, were killed. Many of them were tied hands in the back and shot dead. It continues. The November massacre is just a big symptom of a long-sitting sickness, a sickness called Musevenism in Uganda. So while we are here, ladies and gentlemen, we should look at all the... while I speak to you right now, one of my bodyguards, called Jamshid Kavuma, has been missing for 13 days today. He was picked by security, by soldiers in Ugandan military uniform, and of course others with no uniform. It was captured on camera. Like many others, we have not seen him again. We don't know whether he's alive or dead. That is where we are today, ladies and gentlemen. Among the victims that have spoken, and many that have not spoken, they have dark, dark stories. In this room today, in this room, we have ladies who were raped by Ugandan soldiers and security personnel. In this room. In this room, we have a young man who was castrated like a goat. In this room. Many times, we keep such dark stories to ourselves. But many of them are in this room. He had asked me to call him out so that you people understand that we are actually not making up this. I don't know if you still want to raise your hand, my brother. But in this very room, you can stand from there. That brother is called Magesi, was castrated. In this room here, we have men that have been raped, men that have been sodomized by the Museveni regime. That is where we are. And very painfully, we cannot talk about such in our own home. We are here demanding for human rights, but in our case in Uganda, I'll break it down. We are demanding for the right to be human beings, to be human beings and be treated as such. I was in Europe a few days ago, and they're demanding for different luxurious rights, animal rights, etc., etc. We are yearning for rights to be human beings, rights for which more than 500,000 of our mothers, fathers, and relatives were killed with a promise of a return for the rule of law, return for respect for human rights, and the same. So we are here today, ladies and gentlemen. We are here with heavy hearts, hearts that have been mocked. I mean, when they take you to those dungeons in the chieftaincy for military intelligence, CMI, those guys that torture will first tell you, here, we don't believe in human rights. We don't know human rights, we only know human lefts. Yeah, it would be funny if it was not sad. But that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. You all saw, and Andrew was kidding about it, that General Museveni came out and said, yeah, Bobi Wine was beaten very properly. That is a person that some people in East Africa call the father of the region. Maybe they are right. The father of impunity, the father of dictatorship, the father of lawlessness. That's General Museveni. It will be noted that some of the torture is actually supervised by the Crown Prince of Uganda, General Museveni's son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Many of you saw a prolific writer, Kakwenza Rukira, who is now living in exile in Europe. He mentioned it, that he was tortured and cut and beaten under the supervision of General Muhoozi, Museveni's son. That's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. We can go on and on and on about the pain in Uganda, but Dr. Besigye guided, and I agree with him, that we are not here to lament. But now that we are here, and Kamswaga talked about it, he got very inspired, very motivated that he sees all the leaders, well, not all of us, but at least those that are still, and underline the word still, standing with the people of Uganda. We are here. Now that we are here, we are one. Now that we are here, what next? This is a question that many of our people want to ask. What next? For starters, we need to realize that we are being reduced slowly by slowly. Back when Dr. Kizza Besigye was inspiring us to get into leadership, he opened our eyes and tasked us to open many eyes. We went ahead and opened millions of eyes. Maybe that's why the impunity went a nose high. Now that we are here, and we know that millions of eyes are open back home and all over East Africa, what next? So much can be said. This conference alone cannot be enough. But at least if there's anything to get from this conference, let it flash a light where we are coming from, and that light will bounce back and show us where we're going, because the farther back you look is the farther in front you will see. The Honorable Matthias Puga talked about, reminded us about the Moshi conference. I mean, during their main days, it was so tough that they could not meet in Uganda, they had to meet in Tanzania. A few years ago, still under Museveni, we would meet in Uganda. Now we can no longer meet in Uganda. We are meeting here in Kenya. How sure are we that next year, because Dr. Besigye wants us to meet in Uganda, but how sure are we that next year we will still be able to meet here in Kenya? We might have to meet a little further, maybe in Zambia, or even in Europe, if we just sit and do nothing. In my view, ladies and gentlemen, it's important to look back and to know that there's nothing as important to us as unity. Just our people seeing us together before we even do anything, that's motivation alone for them. Of course, that's just a starting point. So much we can do, but the first step is coming together. On the 24th up to 26th of March 1979, Ugandans met in Tanzania in the Moshi Conference. Among those leaders was Obote. He had a group he was leading. There was, who else? There was John Balije. He had a group that was leading. There was Yoweri Museveni. He had a group that was leading. And there was a gentleman called Pojok. He also had a group that he was leading. It's unfortunate that just after the Moshi conference, they went back home and they got reduced to their own groupings. They got divided, they got united. And yes, with that unity, they were able to remove the Amin dictatorship. Unity put an end to the Amin regime. But they did not notice that that unity had to go even a little bit deeper. They went back home, they got divided. Each one retreated to their own small grouping. And that's part of the reason why we are here. I pray that that gives us time, because 43 years later, this is probably one of the likes of the Moshi conference. But if there's anything to gain from here, it's the unity. So that when we go back home, we don't look at this as another, meet up and taking pictures, and that's the end of it. But let it be the glue that binds us. And let it also be a testament to our Kenyan brothers and sisters that have stood for and with us, to stick together, to not retreat in our small groupings, to not identify ourselves as NUP, as FDC, as JEMA, etc., etc. Because we are living under a dictatorship, friends. I'm speaking, and yet I lead a party. But I'll tell you that realistically, there are no political parties in Uganda. You cannot claim to be a political party when you cannot even organize, when you cannot even carry out party activities. Yes, we find ourselves fighting within the opposition. But a deep thinker will shock you to tell you that you cannot claim to have an opposition in Uganda. There's no opposition and there's no government. There's just one group of oppressors oppressing all of us. Only that the oppressors have proved a little smarter. They are more united than we, the oppressed. They are united in their impunity. So it's important, ladies and gentlemen, that we look at that unity, build on it, and that unity will benefit Ugandans. When we come together, it's for the benefit. These people, these torture survivors that have been here, they are, in my view, a representation of Ugandans. None of these victims was running for any position of office. No, they were supporting us. That's what they faced. And like David Lewis has mentioned it, these are just the few cases that we can show. Otherwise, many of them are even too threatened, they're too scared to even speak out. So now that we are here, ladies and gentlemen, let's capitalize on that unity. Let's build on that unity. Fellow leaders, let us put country before self, like General Monto always guides us. Our country should be bigger than us, and the pain of our people. If there's nothing, that should unite us, ladies and gentlemen. As I conclude, I want to ask us to stick to the values and not sell out. I'll say that again. Let us stick to the values and not sell out. Besides using violence, General Museveni buys our people. You've seen leaders that once upon a time respected selling out. So the pain of our people should guide us to know that a lot of sacrifice has been made. And let us just return the favor by standing by those values for which we convinced them to get into that trouble, and they are still standing. Let me ask all of us to major on majors. Our major focus and fight is freedom. We should fight to be free. Otherwise, we will not be different from prisoners that are fighting for who is going to be the one serving both the posho and the porridge. Let us fight and free ourselves from this prison called Uganda, and go into a new Uganda where all of us are going to be free and equal before and under the law. To our Kenyan brothers and friends, we thank you. To the Kenyan leaders, and yes, also the citizens, please resist Museveni and Musevenism. I say it again, please Kenyans, refuse and resist Musevenism. You have seen, and we told you, and we are continuing to see. We want to be able to come and say these things from a neighboring country. And this kind of freedom, I mean, Kenya, you are certainly not where you want to be, but you are where many of us dream to reach. Please keep this, guard it, and guard it very, very jealously, because once you lose it, you will spend generations trying to get it. To the media, Kenyan media, please keep shining the light on our plight. While we appreciate the Ugandan media, you'll agree with me that it has largely been silenced. We depend so much on social media, and as you know, Facebook is banned in Uganda. Why? Because General Museveni doesn't like it. So, for the media, please keep highlighting our plight. Show the world what is going on in Uganda. That is helpful a great deal. Many of us are still alive because of that weapon called the camera. It is very, very powerful. Please, mutubere. That's a slang back in the ghetto. That means, watch us, don't take your eyes off us, please. And finally, to the international, every opportunity to call up the international community, and I want to do the same right now. You are the people that are propping up monsters in Africa. Idi Amin was supported by you majorly until you got tired of him. Mugabe was supported by you until you got tired of him. My question is, haven't you gotten tired of Museveni yet? When Mugabe did to the people of Zimbabwe what Museveni is doing to the people of Uganda, you sanctioned him. When Taylor did the same, you sanctioned him. When Saddam did the same, you sanctioned him. Why are you still hobnobbing with the dictator called Museveni? Please, the international community, stop sponsoring our terror. Stop sponsoring our oppression. Stop being partners in crime. Thank you very much for going.
Thank you very much. Now like to invite a shining beacon of democracy, women leadership in general, struggle for a better East Africa, none other than Honorable Martha Karua.
Mwebale nnyo bannange data gwako bannange simanyi kya Kenya data mutono data nataddeko 5GB oba sente mmeka oba bagita 10 oba 10 data aweddeko bannange enda besonyiwamuko ate mbaweesa ekitiibwa. Martha Karua mbadde mwagala nnyo naye gotten a problem nti data wange aweddeko naye kyopolabanga navuddeko neninda president.
Asking that we observe a minute of silence for the victims of torture, many of whom you've spoken about before I arrived. Please, let's give a minute. Thank you very much. Let's take The Honorable Kisa Besije, the Honorable Sentamu Chambulani, I hope I have said it properly, the very distinguished leaders whom I will not be able to mention individually, distinguished participants and survivors, and our host, the Kenya Human Rights Commission. What a wonderful day when we can come together as citizens of East Africa in solidarity with Ugandans, discussing issues that are dear to them, remembering the victims of torture, some of them departed, and those living with the disabilities and injuries they received, and also asking ourselves, what can we do to get ourselves out of these circumstances? I have heard you saying that Kenya is where you would want to be, not exactly. Not all that glitters is gold. I think there is a recession of democracy all over the world, and Kenya is no exception. And that is why, in standing in solidarity with you, we remind ourselves that vigilance is the price of democracy. If we do not have vigilance, continuous, purposeful vigilance, even those who look like they're doing okay can lose what they have. I'm very horrified by what I have seen here, and I came at the end of it. And one of the things we must be asking ourselves as leaders, as we depart today, is what can we do to help those who are still suffering with injuries that can be attended to, because that is of urgent importance, and immediate attention must be given to that, even as we ask ourselves what we can do. Before you hear the stories of the survivors, our description of brave is wanting. What I have heard and seen here today is what describes bravery. And they are still standing tall, saying, "Aluta, continue." They are still unapologetic about their defense of democracy and human rights. I had both Besigye and Changulani ask or call for unity. We cannot succeed in this fight without unity of purpose. Because united we stand, but divided we fall. And the oppressor always hopes to divide. The old colonial tactic of divide and rule is there even today. It divides people, the good and the bad. And today, citizens of our countries, not just Uganda, but even Kenya, divide themselves unconsciously or consciously, the good and the bad. That you don't want to call out a regime that is eroding democracy and human rights. You don't want to call out brutes because you want to give them a chance. And I am here to say we should not give even a minute, even a second. We should give no chance to people who have no respect for democracy and human rights. And democracy means recognizing that whatever you are doing as a leader, you do in the name of the people. And if you are not doing it in the name of the people, then you are illegitimate. Because you have usurped a space that belongs to the people to oppress them instead of working for them. I kept on asking as we sat there, how can this happen? How can there be so much cruelty in a regime that prides itself on people? Because in East Africa, all our countries go through some sort of elections, whether sham or otherwise, and then they celebrate being elected. We don't have an army general. In Uganda, we have a president. In Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania and all other East African countries, we have presidents who claim victory at elections. So if you're working for the people, how can you use the position given to you or you usurped from the people to commit the atrocities that we have seen? We can only answer that by promising ourselves to free our minds so that we can take back our power and act. And when you acquiesce dictatorship, either because you want to maintain your job as a civil servant, a government officer in a parastatal or wherever you are, because you want favor as a business person or as a citizen, you are exposing those who stand up for rights. Imagine a Uganda where 90% or even just 50% of the people are vocal about their human rights, refuse to be cowed. Imagine a Kenya where 50% of the people refuse to be cowed, or any other country. There will be no room for the atrocities that we have listened to today and we have witnessed through the media happening in Uganda and elsewhere. In Kenya, atrocities have happened. Maybe not to as many people currently, but if you remember our 2017 elections, an electoral officer was murdered. Murder was foul. We have had people killed, witnesses, ICC witnesses. It doesn't matter at what time human rights are violated, whether because of personal issues, elections, or any other issue. They all happen because a person feels threatened by the person they attack, or you want people to fear. Because what has happened to the brothers and sisters who talked here today is supposed to be a warning to others that this can happen to you. If a majority of us stand firm, we will help ourselves by creating safe space where we can agitate for our rights. So today, I'm talking not to the converted, because people in this room are already converted. They are already human rights defenders. I want to talk to citizens of East Africa, of Uganda, of Kenya, of Tanzania, of Rwanda, Burundi, of every East African country. And I want to say that it is your silence that is exposing the brave in our community who get tortured, who get killed, and it is your silence, our collective silence, that is helping dictatorship thrive in East Africa and in our individual countries. And if you think we are safe or you are safe, whichever country you belong to, if we continue this way, we will be submerged by dictatorship and violation of human rights. We were brave enough to fight the colonialists. We must be brave enough to fight our fellow black oppressors. It is not the color, it is the action. To our international friends, people say, show me your friends, and I tell you who you are. Standing silent in the way of violation, grave violation of human rights, erosion of democracy, and rising dictatorship within the East African region. It's an act that tells us that our friends as East Africans are dwindling, that they see fire in our house and they are not coming to our rescue. And I want to repeat to echo what was said by Besije and Chambulani. The primary responsibility of wrestling the monster of dictatorship lies with us as residents of East Africa, lies with the people of Uganda, the people of Kenya, the people of Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi. And that is why we are standing up here today. But we want to be able to look and number our friends who really come to our aid. And there is no such a thing as standards of democracy or human rights for the developing nation and for the developed nation. A human being is a human being, in spite of their circumstances. So let us continue resisting. Let us continue preaching to our brothers and sisters that if we stand together, we will be able to overcome, because we will overcome. History is replete with examples. No dictator lives forever. And no oppressed people stay under oppression forever. The apartheid regime of South Africa, it had now settled almost as though it was a normal regime, a normal country among community of nations. But when the time came, it felt like, I don't know, the same with the Berlin Wall and with many other things. And I want to say to the community of nations and to us, dictatorship spreads beyond borders. In East Africa, let us refuse dictatorship. In whichever country, whether Musevenism, whether in Kenya, because in Kenya, I can see the making of a dictator. Yes. And dictators are made by citizens remaining silent. We have had in the recent few months cases being withdrawn, cases of fraud being withdrawn, rape, whatever murder, being withdrawn, where the suspects are people in power. We have seen land grabbing cases, affidavits being sworn, saying there was no land grabbing. How come all these cases about people in power, not the ordinary people? Something is cooking in Kenya, and this is the making of dictatorship. I am here to stand in solidarity with Uganda, but to remind my fellow Kenyans that our silence will make a dictator worse than we have ever seen. Yes. I want to say that I will not be silent, inspired always by the relics of Juliani's song, Sister Simama Maovu ya Kitawala. As long as I have breath, I promise myself that I'll raise my voice whenever it is necessary. And that is why I am here to raise my voice in solidarity with Uganda, with solidarity, in solidarity with East Africa, and saying also no to any form of oppression, lawlessness, and any form of state capture in Kenya, because it begins with the leaders thinking that they own the state, when we, the people, own the state. Kindly let us make our individual and collective voices heard, and let us stand in solidarity with each other and say there is no room for dictatorship in East Africa. I thank you.
Let me try my Swahili and ask you Ugandans, Nini Waganda, Even in my copy,
ebigambo
unaweza kupigia
ndowooza ebigambo mbiwulidde bulungi saagala kubiddamu ali mukulembeze naye data agiye alabikko bandi omukama katonda abasaasire kozi Kenya nkakasiza nti si Uganda data. Wow, that woman has spoke. Byonna abyogedde sirina kyemubanja. His Excellency abyogedde sirina kyembabanja. Gw'omuliro ngulina naye data weeno alimu bitaano lukumi GB2.
So I'm going to seek your indulgence very briefly and request for 25 minutes of your time for us to launch into the final activity of the day. And I'll tell you what that activity is. Just to recognize a couple of people, forgive us if your name has not been included on this list. Honorable Joel Senyoni, this is in no particular order. Honorable Joel Senyoni. Honorable Derek Nyeko. Honorable Kabir Frank. Honorable Salam Musumba. Honorable Salam Musumba, who insists on being designated as chairman, not any other designation. Honorable Ina Waru. Honorable Ingrid Turinawe. Honorable Otto. Honorable Winnie Kiza. Honorable Mpuga Matthias, who spoke to you earlier. Honorable Waiswa Alex Mufumbiro. Sarah Birete. Imam Kasozi. Honorable Lubega Mukapu.
Walter.
Honorable Harold Kaija. Honorable Frank Katarazi. Nubian Lee.
Omunubi mwali aliwa yone amwetiseemu enlange.
Orion Yako from Human Rights Watch. Roland from Amnesty International. The Free Kenya movement, represented by their chair. Thank you. And now I'd like us one more time to appreciate all our leaders who spoke for the past hour or so. Please let's appreciate them again. So here's my request to all of you, so that we tie this up nicely, to not do justice to this event if we do not end with a way forward that is coherent, that is robust, that will make this meeting productive. So to help us have this discussion on what we should do moving forward, I would like to constitute a panel that represents various fields of civil society, not least NGOs, political parties, social movements, and so on. And so, to that end, I'd like to welcome Imam Kasozi. Honorable Winnie Kiza. Sarah Birete. Oriem Nyeko. Honorable Salam Musumba. Reverend Sami Wainana.
Utabeera na data saagala kulimba madde byonna mbikwata.
ekyanjisizaako mu kusooka nga njagala kukwata speech ya president amazima nga data ampeddeko nenga muleka mbizavingeyokko nkwate speech ya president kale mukamberekereze.
So